So here I want to try to explain the Sorenson test for back extensor muscle endurance. And let's just look at the setup before we pay attention to all the drawing or the diagrams of the forces and moments here. So we can see that the person's on a plinth. They're from about the end of their pelvis. They're free, so their trunk is free, so they're having to hold their trunk up while stabilizing force is applied to the midsection of the legs, and that challenges the back extensor muscles to meet this flexion moment that's generated by the weight of the trunk. And so we can see that in this external moment equation where we have the center of mass of the trunk and head and arms here, and that's acting downward, and then the moment arm from that center of mass to L5 is kind of drawn out here. And so the flexion moment would simply be the force of the mass of the trunk times this moment arm into flexion. And so the back extensor muscles would have to generate an internal moment that opposes that flexion. Okay, so one more caveat though is that the pelvis is also free to move here. And so if the hip extensor muscles don't posteriorly tilt the pelvis, the origin, which is the attachment of the back extensor muscles, will tilt the pelvis into an anterior pelvic tilt. So there has to also be synchronous co-contraction of the back of the hip extension muscles to stabilize the pelvis, to allow the back extensor muscles to maintain their kind of neutral position. Now we can drop down to this diagram here where it shows kind of a nice animation of the lumbar spine and what the lumbar spine would be doing when the Sorenson test is executed. And so from an internal moment perspective, we've drawn a vector here that is away from the spine because those erector spinae muscles really mostly pass over the spine and go to the thorax. And so they generate a moment with a moment arm that extends from this force vector to L5, what we're calculating our moment about. And then the multifidi muscles, though, are the deep muscles in this case. And so they're running segmentally from vertebrae to sacrum. And so we've represented it here as a muscle close to the spine. And then its moment arm is shown here as a perpendicular distance to L5. And then we've written out the equation here on the left that the moment around the lumbar spine would be handled by the erector spinae times its moment arm plus the multifidi times its moment arm. Now, we've also kind of included a force vector here around the hip joint. And so the hip joint, these gluteus maximus muscles, should be the primary hip extensor here, would generate a hip extension torque, which would oppose the flexion that's caused here by the erector spinae muscles and the multifidi.